folks. Welcome. This is Inside the Leader's Mind, where what's in the way becomes the way. I'm your host, David Suson. And on this podcast, this is where we meet with leaders and we look at how they see the world, their beliefs, their challenges, turning points, and things that shape who they are as leaders today. I'm excited for our guest today, Sean Agnew. Sean bridges worlds between the boardroom, clinic, and the creative room, between strategy and story, between vision and velocity, and his superpower, helping leaders break through by translating insights across domains that rarely speak the same language. Sean, welcome. Good to have you with me today.
Thanks you, David. Pleasure to be here.
All right, we just got to start. First of all, I want to talk about, before you tell me your journey and kind of what you do now, I want to talk about a little bit of what you said in that intro, right? Can you just explain a little bit about what you mean by bridging worlds and that whole kind of what I talked about there?
Well, it comes from me being, as one of my best friends I grew up with from grade school calls me the Black Forrest Gump. So having so many different disparate engagements growing up. So for a number of years, I was in the entertainment industry. For a number of years, I had the pleasure of working for an icon in software. For a number of years, I got another wonderful opportunity that it was a happenstance it took to work for a gentleman that ended up launching a company that went from a startup to a $3.6 billion buyout. For a number of years, I was mentored by a legend in network marketing and got to experience that up close and personal. And then have been very fortunate to be around some very, very talented people in the corporate world as a leader. So I've found that I've been able to take some pieces from all of those experiences. And sometimes I've been in rooms and used a different viewpoint that maybe wasn't what everybody else in the room had, and has been able to sort of meld that way for them to be able to move forward. So that's sort of been the path. I'd love to say it was by design, but that would be a falsehood. So I'm just going to say it happened the way it was meant to happen.
There you go. And I have that belief. I used to say that every day, twice a day for 2 years straight. Everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. And whether you believe it or not, sometimes it's a little bit easier to live life as a human, just to be able to say, hey, it happens for a reason. It's a decision you made, and that's a result of your decision, going to that job versus that job, or marrying this person versus this one, or, so every
Absolutely.
Decision we make affects us. So tell me a little bit about what you do now, and then and I don't care which order you tell me, but I'd love to hear what you do and kind of the path to what you do now.
So I'm a chief growth officer for a company called IuvoCare, we're an international healthcare company. So essentially what happens is, in a lot of large advanced medical and also basic supplies like DME, you have a lot of companies that end up not having enough sales support. Maybe they've got a team of 2 or 3 and they want to be going throughout the U.S., or maybe they're global and have a team of 5 or 6. And we ended up finding out that through another journey that a lot of times they don't have the means for that. And it costs, between $3 to $9 million to recruit a 10 to 25 person sales team, manage them, lead them. And sometimes they didn't have the expertise nor wanted to take that on. So we are that extended arm for those companies to be able to come on, learn about their products, learn about their services. We already have the connections with the doctors and the clinics and hospitals in various parts of the country and now in various regions. And so I direct all of that, everything that has to do with the growth of the company, and then partner with my CMO and my CEO as far as, and our COO and Steve, Chief Strategy Officer, to be able to decide how we grow, where we grow, and to make sure it actually happens.
And how did you get to this point in your career? And you talked a little bit about it earlier, but what's kind of been the roadmap to this?
Well, I mean, my original journey was in the military. And so I always fall back on my military experiences which most people I've talked to have been in the military or in a military family. I think we all kind of have the same thing where when we're younger, we complain about those things, but as we're older, we understand the benefit, and we are very blessed to have had those experiences.
Oh yeah.
So that really started things off. And then I was an artist for a number of years. I sang, and then
Now, when you say artist,
yeah, I was the lead singer of a couple of different groups. I'm not going to mention the names, but one of them we ended up getting the ability to. We played the second stage of the very first two Lollapaloozas, so that'll tell you my age right there. So, and I was always the guy that ended up interacting with the record label folks and doing the business end of things. So I ended up transitioning, worked for a number of labels. After that, ended up being on the International Music Managers Forum for a number of years. And then when I left that world, because it always happens based on a job or a girl, right, or a guy, I ended up, my wife didn't necessarily like that lifestyle. And so I left that and ended up going into sales because I always liked people and I love the communication. I actually went to school in Europe for business communication. So it seemed very natural. And from there, went on to love being a salesperson, love learning about sales, basically being a sponge of anybody I knew who was successful and modeling them and what they did. And as I said, from some of the journeys earlier, from network marketing to healthcare to software, I realized it was all the same thing with different wrappers. So it was basically being able to sit down and having the wherewithal to listen to someone, find out what they really were saying. Because what ends up happening, as we all know in sales, is people buy what they want. But if you're really good in sales, you're selling them what they want, but underlying, you're giving them what they need. So that was always the way I approached it. That's how I was taught, and has served me well. And from there, I went on to be a chief sales officer for a number of companies. I was an executive VP for a worldwide hospitality company where I had a division of 400 people, 25 direct reports. And then I had a health issue a few years back and decided that I needed to focus more on my family and traveling less and not doing those things. And that led me into getting into healthcare because I saw some of the challenges. And my mom had been in healthcare for 25 years and told me some things. And so I saw that there was some better way to do some things and went across the country opening clinics for a different company for 4 or 5 years and ended up making a good reputation for myself and landed the opportunity to help IuvoCare be a global power that we're striving to be now.
I love that. That's really cool. Who, when you look at your career, especially in leadership, who or what shaped how you lead today?
I was really, I think kind of like you. I think you and I are similar in that from some of the things I've seen from you, some of your stuff online, right? We're sponges for leadership and communication. And so, early on, I'm still a big John Maxwell-aholic. So I really love servant leadership. My original mentors, that's all they preached. That's all they talked about. I got a chance for a handful of about 3 or 4 years to be able to speak on the public speaking circuit, and was on the circuit for a while with Jack Canfield and Victor Hansen when they were, the authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul, an amazing classic. Getting to be sponges for them. Les Brown took me under his wing when I was 28, and got the chance to really learn from him. And then the ultimate probably was I got the opportunity to speak with Dr. Stephen Covey before he passed. So those were all really great moments. And what they did was they really got me the opportunity to see what good leadership was up close and personal, and to be able to ask questions. And so I think that's what's always driven me. Instead of, I would see those people that would come in and say, hey, it has to be this way, this way, this way. And there's no good or bad about that. That's just was their style. But for me, I was always Socratic, and I wanted to find out the inner workings. And I think part of that was I grew up, reading mystery novels all the time, the Hardy Boys and, Nancy Drew and all that stuff. So I think that really got me to look at conversations differently when I would have that. And I think that's always been the way I've been, and that's how I've taught my leaders that I've worked with.
Now, so if you look at the specific leaders you had, were they like you? Did you look up to them in the sense of going, oh my gosh, I want to be just like you? or was it kind of the opposite? So you look at Covey and Maxwell and all these and say, I don't want to. That's not who I want to be. What would you
Yeah,
say?
that's a great question. It was a combination of both, actually. There were some things about them that, not that they were good or bad, they just weren't in my wheelhouse. I think I've, over the years, I've been pretty good at knowing the things that I like and the things that I do well. And so there were some things about them. Dr. Covey was he could really get into the details and the nuts and bolts. And, some of the conversations were just, I was nodding, but my understanding wasn't there. And I know he knew that. So, and then there were other leaders that I really absolutely were like, wow, yeah, I want to be just like that. One of my leaders was a gentleman named Bill Gould. At the time I worked with him, he was, I think, the 56th or 57th wealthiest person in the country. And so, but his energy and his dynamic nature were always something that I still to this day strive to be. I don't think I've matched it, but have always strived to have, because when he walked in a room, you didn't know what he was, you didn't know who he was, but he had a power that made you want to talk to him. And it wasn't one of those where, we've all been around those people that walk in the room and they just, they want to be and they want to be the center of the room. It was never like that. It was absolutely not like that. And it was just fascinating to see. So he's one that I always think of when I'm going in those situations where I want to enter a space, and not necessarily that I want to be the loudest voice, but I want to enter the space maybe to be the most helpful, most pertinent voice.
Do you know what it was, if you reflect back? Do you know what it was that attracted people to want to connect with him?
Well, I think when I look back on it, I didn't know when I was younger. And I always think that we always try to convey competence over confidence, right? And I think for him, it was just confidence. He never tried to come into a room to prove he knew what he knew. He just knew he knew it, and he exuded that. So when I'm in meetings, when I'm in, with boardrooms and things like that, I want to exude that I know what I know. I don't have to be the know-it-all. And quite frankly, I love it when I'm absolutely not the smartest person in that room, because the journey is about learning and it's about advancement. It's about expanding and contributing where you can. And, our household model, my kids get tired of it because now they can say it on command, just me looking at them. But our household model is to leave it as good or better than what we found it.
I love that.
So when I'm done, that's what I hope people are able to say, was that in whatever small way, their interaction with me or my company or anything that I'm involved in, I left it as good or better than what I found it. And I always felt like,
that.
I felt like when he walked into a room, that's what he was doing.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Now, as you think about the team you lead now or in the past, if they were to describe you with one word on your best day,
Thanks.
not
Thanks
on your worst day. Yeah, I gotta throw you the line there. But what would that word be, and why?
If I had to go through everybody, just from the comments that they've given me over the years, dependable. Dependable. Because if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And the one thing I've always wanted to be is that person that, if you needed me at 3 a.m. in the morning, you knew you could call me and I would, one way or the other, I would take care of you. So, and even, it's so funny. I was at a elite mastermind group last week with a bunch of incredibly high super achievers in Scottsdale. And we had an after event. And so there were some people riding with me, and we were in this restaurant ordering some stuff. And there was a little kerfuffle toward the back, and just automatic. I wasn't even thinking about it. I ended up shepherding the people that were with me into a safer area. went out, made sure everything was okay, got them sat back. And then one of the people, she said, wow, you take care of people, don't you? And I, once again, didn't think about it, wasn't trying to make an impression, but it is who I am. So it was interesting that she had that read, and I think we'd known each other probably a course of about 18 minutes at that moment. So, yeah.
That's pretty cool. And the fact that you reflected on it in that moment, I think is fascinating. I think that's
Yeah.
really cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool. So, as you think about leadership and what you do well, what's something do you think people get wrong about leadership? And until maybe they've actually in the middle of it.
Well, I think for me, and especially the leaders I've trained, I think that one of the most common misnomers is that you're supposed to know everything, that you're supposed to have the answers to everything. And that is absolutely a fallacy. It's not possible. If you know everything about every situation, you can't be pushing and expanding enough. There's just no way. Now, what you can be is the person that goes, hey, everything just went to heck in a handbasket, but I'm going to be calm about it. And we're going to figure out a solution on how you work through it. So when I talk to leaders of any age, that's usually what they talk about in their journey is getting comfortable with not knowing everything, but feeling good about how they're going to move forward and strategize and implement.
Let me bounce off that and then ask you, tell me about a moment in your leadership that really tested you. And let's say it didn't go perfectly, but it really taught you a lot.
Well, the one that always stands out, I've had many, but the one that always stands out was when I was with the software company and I had a division that was in my purview, and 9/11 happened.
Oh, wow.
And I was the youngest division leader at that time. And I had been to foreign countries as a soldier, but I wasn't making command decisions at that level. I was just following orders. And to suddenly have, a large number of people looking to me to go, hey, what do we do? What's going on? Because we had offices in that building. Like I was in Chicago, but we had people in that building
In New York.
in New York. And so, yeah, that was that was twofold. That was an incredibly scary time because once again, because of my nature, I always want to be the person that's taking care of people, right? I've never drank, I've never smoked, I've never done illegal drugs. So in every party I've ever been to, I'm the guy that makes sure people don't take their keys and make sure they get home. And in that moment, I did not feel I was able to provide what I would want to provide to those folks. Now, most of them over the years have come to me and been very, very kind and said they felt comforted by my responses. But to this day, I don't feel that way.
So
So,
what did you learn from that moment then?
well, I think in a large way, I learned that control is an illusion. It's 100% mental, just like fear. It's an illusion. And we have ultimate control of how we respond to those things. So in that moment, I felt helpless. And then later that got me to realize that was a figment of my imagination, that I could control what I could control. And so that's always been something since that day that I've tried to embody. And I go back to that moment. I mean, you kind of see it on my body language. I go back to that moment periodically just to remind myself.
So if you were going back in time and you were going to whisper to yourself back then, what would you have said? What would you tell yourself?
I would say it's okay to feel what you're feeling. It's okay to not know what the next step is, as long as you're there for everybody, as long as you're there for the people who look up for you, and whether that's just listening and not necessarily having an answer. Because, typically most men, we're wired to try to answer things. So, and I'm hyper on that. So I would have told myself, hey, you don't have to have all the answers right now. You just got to be there. You just got to be there.
What about today from a leadership role? What's been the hardest part about being that person that everyone is looking to for the answers?
For me, it's time. I'm a helper by nature, so I have people who want me to help them and reach out and things like that, and there's not enough time in the day, right? I have to focus on things that are going to be more beneficial to a larger group of folks, which means sometimes I'm going to have to disappoint one or two people or a smaller group of people. So much to the point that I have people that help me to make sure that I don't do that, because I know I'm going to, if I'm asked, I'm going to help. So I have to put some buffers in for time to make sure that I'm able to focus on the larger picture versus getting down into, helping one or two people.
So I used to do that a lot, right? I would sacrifice my own work to help my team. And then I would just go, well, that's okay. I could just do it later tonight. And then the problem is that sound familiar to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, my friend. Yep.
So as a leader over the years, um, what have you learned about yourself that maybe has genuinely surprised you?
Genuinely surprised me. Well, I think I've always been the person, for good or bad, that felt like I could do anything. You give me enough,
Superman.
yeah, you give me enough time, enough resources. If I don't know it, I'll learn it. I still have a little bit of that, but I think some of that has been tampered in situations where I'm like, hey, you know what? I can't do all this by myself. Like I have to lean on other people. I have to let other people do what they do. And I actually had a mentor mid-career that his saying was always, I do what I do best and I pay someone else to do the rest. And I always used to shake my head. I'm like, why? I'll just learn, but as I've gotten older and hopefully wiser, I'm more sitting fine with that now these days, where I 100% see where he was coming from, and I see why he was doing that and why he was trying to pound that into my really thick skull at the time. So,
It's that whole idea, and I love it from Now Discover Your Strengths, the book, and it's leverage your strength and manage your weakness.
yep.
And I think what we do, and if you're those of you that are listening to this, if you're a parent, sometimes, and I've got 3 kids, thank goodness I read that book when my kids were little, because I think what we tend to do, and we do it with people, we do it with our employees, we do it with our teams, is we say, I got to make you better at this because you're not good at time management. You're not good at organization. You're not good at, writing. And what the book talks about is you leverage your strength and manage the weakness. And what we tend to do is try to bring the weakness up. But then what happens is we don't focus and leverage the strength. So now we become mediocre. And so with kids, and my analogy is to leadership, with my kids, I've always tried to look at them and go, what are their real strengths? Because
Mm,
yeah, you have to know enough to get by, right? You got to read, basic read and write, right? But what are their real natural strengths that they have this affinity toward, and push them toward that and leverage that? And then, so with employees, like in my keynote, and I'm going to share this with you, in my keynote, I explain, I say, you can't turn a cat into a dog.
mm,
And there's a picture on the cover of my book of a cat and a dog, and people go, what is that? And I said, well, what we do is we it's like buying a cat and thinking that cat's going to go on 5-mile runs with you and go to the park and chase the ball. And you're just going to be frustrated and upset, wishing it was different. And I think we do that with employees,
mm.
where we say, well, I wish they were different. They're not good at this. And let's get them better, as opposed to, you know what? Let's find out what they're really good at and let's send them in that direction. Because guess what? There's other people on the team that are better at the stuff that they're weak at.
Yep. No,
So
100%. 100%. And it's interesting you say that, because that really for a while, I was when I was with the worldwide hospitality company, they had me working in the timeshare vacation sales division with those sales reps. And initially, that was incredibly frustrating for me at that time in my career because, with any good salesperson, obviously, if you're good enough and consistent enough as professional salespeople to ask for the buy all the time, you're going to get to the point where you have really thick skin on the nose. And so I knew that going into it because I had trained salespeople before, but in different businesses. But what I found with that was like trying to train, like cowboys, right? Because it wasn't just that no wasn't the answer. It was like they would try to find any way to go outside of the SOP. So I had to really find creative ways to leverage their strengths, to your point, because initially the first 5 or 6 months, I was trying to change their weaknesses, which was
Yeah.
incredibly frustrating. And what I was doing is I was taking some of the best salespeople and trying to mute them, which would not work for them and it would not work for the company and for the
Yeah.
results. So yeah, that's interesting you say that.
And I think also as leaders, to go back to some of what you said, I think as leaders, it's looking at what we're really strong at and
Yep.
leveraging our strength. And I learned this many years ago. I hired an assistant, and it is by far the best thing I ever did because it was so much easier for me to have the creative ideas and do the high level work. And then the little things hand off to someone else who loved doing that stuff.
Yep.
And we had this perfect synergy, and it's one of the most productive I've been. And what I tell leaders now is oftentimes they say, well, I don't have my own assistant, and we don't have the budget for that. And that's where I come in. And it's like, all right, how can we? How can we find a way to get you someone that can help you? Because you're going to take your productivity and your results through the roof. You
Absolutely.
know, I'm
Absolutely.
wondering, have you had to deal with this at all yourself?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Like,
I've had that in so many different iterations that I just know, once again, the things that I'm not good at, that, I've had to fight myself because, like I said, I told you earlier, I felt like I could do anything. Give me enough time, I'll learn whatever.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
there's certain things that, to your point, which is probably really important, is that to not just get somebody who's good at it, but somebody who actually enjoys
enjoy it.
that. That
Yeah,
makes a huge difference on productivity.
I'm going to share this because the people who are listening say, well, who would love doing the stuff you hate? You would be shocked. Like, I stand in a room when I do a keynote with 1,000 people, and I'll say, raise your hand if you like to clean.
Yep.
And the hands that go up, and people, and they get this grin on their face, and they get so excited about cleaning, and you're like, you got to be kidding. And I'll say, how many of you who in the room loves, organizing like a garage? And people raise their hand, and I'm like, so if I needed help, you love it so much you would do it for free. And they're like, yeah, I would love it. So what we don't realize, I think sometimes and I is people think that you're dumping on them
Mm-hmm.
things you don't like.
Right.
But if you find the right people on your team and you
Yep.
hire the right people, they don't see it as dumping.
Yeah.
They see it as, oh my gosh, this is you're creating the greatest. I have the greatest day ever today because I got to do that for you.
Yeah.
And people can't imagine that. It's
Yep.
fascinating.
It really
Hey,
is.
I do want to ask you, what do you think your team right now, what do you think your team needs from you right now, but they may not say it out loud?
That's tough because I really am very blessed and promote my team to be very forthright about pretty much everything. So most of the things they'll tell me, fortunately, because I've sought out those people, because I've had those people in the past that would not do that. But if I had to guess, I would say that sometimes they might need me to yell at them.
Really?
Yeah. I
They would ask you for that. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. And I just say that because once again, in my military background, when I was in, I had I had a number of drill sergeants, but I had a Drill Sergeant Joe Jackson. I will remember this man till my last breath. And he was just on me all the time, like all the time. And I was a squad leader. And no matter what, if my squad came in first and whatever the case may be, it wasn't good enough. He would come and talk to me, yell at me, whatever. And I remember as we graduated and he walked off, there was another drill sergeant who came up and it was his best friend. And he said, good job to you. Good luck in your service. He said, I just want you to know, you do understand you're his absolute favorite, right? I go, what? Like, you're kidding. I'm his favorite? I hate to see the person he likes the least if I'm his favorite, right? And he goes, no, he said, he sees something in you. He talks about you every single day and the fact of what he sees that you could become and what you could do. He said, I know you didn't know it, and I know he's never going to tell you, which is why I took a moment to tell you before you left the base. And that was incredibly eye-opening for me and meaningful. And like I said, I account Drill Sergeant Jackson for a lot of the things that make me who I am today. And I think over the years, when I came out of the military, I think I was much more, it's got to be this way, much more stern. And I think whether it's kids, old age, or life, whatever the case may be, I've wanted to have a softer hand. And I think sometimes there may be they may want just a taste of the Sean from 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. So
yeah, oh my gosh. You're so funny. You're so funny. Well, last a couple questions here. Podcast is inside the leader's mind. What's in the way becomes the way. And people ask me about all that a lot, and they say, "Well, what do you mean by that?" Well, I want you to think, because you'll answer it with his question: is what is something that once felt like an obstacle for you, but actually became a strength or a turning point for you?
Well, the main thing for me, I think, was I didn't take a traditional route into business. And because I went to school, most of my schooling was outside the U.S. And for a lot of years, probably a decade or so, I always felt like that was a hindrance to me and that was an impediment. And I mean, the last 15 or 20 years, it's been the exact opposite. It's allowed me to be a person that you can drop in the middle of virtually anything, and I'll get it right pretty quickly, and I'm able to be adaptable, to be a chameleon of sorts, and that has really, really served me very, very well. So I think early on that was what it was thinking that because I didn't come in a traditional route like some of my friends and buddies and went to one specific school in the States for 4 years and ended up doing an internship and doing this and going and staying with this company. Yeah, for like a good 10, 12 years, I felt like that was an impediment to me. But yeah, now I couldn't have imagined going another route, and I've definitely seen the blessings of that.
I think that's kind of life, and I think it goes to the comment you made earlier about as you get older. We look at what happens to us is what some people believe, and it's not until you look back and say, "Wait a minute, it was every decision, every micro decision I made, everything that happened made me who I am." And I think it's a decision that we as humans make, or leaders make, or high performers make, is to look at it as a strength and say, well, how do I leverage that?
Yep.
Why is that good?
Yep.
I have a buddy that moved. He was a military brat, and I think they moved. It was so funny when I worked with him, he had 35 different addresses, previous addresses. So when he would fill out applications, it was a nightmare.
Yep.
And it is the greatest thing in the world for this guy because it's made him who he is. And had he not been through that, I mean, it could have obviously it could have crashed and burned,
Sure.
but it just his resilience, change, adversity. He's like, that's my life. I don't know any different. And he
Yeah.
turns into, I call it turning into the storm. He just
Mm.
turns into it. And so thank you for sharing that. I love that. I
Yeah,
love
that's
that.
awesome. Yeah, I try to teach that to my kids and especially my daughter, my youngest, because she's already lived in what 5 states already, and she's only 8. So yeah,
Yeah, tell her how lucky she is.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they don't see it that way, but oh man, aren't you lucky?
Yeah.
You are so lucky. I love it. All right, last question. What is the question you wish people would ask you? They just don't know to ask you.
Probably what scares you the most when you are growing or advancing a business or a project?
And
Yeah.
the answer is
For me, the answer is always, is the goal big enough? Is what we're trying to do big enough? Because I just feel like there's so much that comes out of that when you stretch.
hmm,
Whether you actually get to the end of that line or not, so much happens when you stretch. And so that's always the biggest thing for me is whenever whatever company I've been with and whatever the project is it big enough? Should we go bigger? Should be looking for a further destination than what we're looking at?
love that. That takes a lot of guts because the bigger the goal, the bigger you can fail.
Yeah, well, I mean that's part of the Superman syndrome is I never think I'm going to fail, so that's the
Love
great
it.
thing.
Hey, hey, if it works for you, it works for you. If hey, Sean, thank you so much. If someone wants to get in touch, learn more, what's the best way for them to connect with you or learn more?
Best thing is best 2 ways. Email Sean SEAN at IuvoCare IuvoCare.com or on LinkedIn, and it's under M Sean Agnew. You can find me there. I'm usually posting once a week or once or twice a day. Anyway,
I love it. Well, Sean, you've been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and for being such a great guest. I appreciate you.
absolutely. I appreciate you, David. Especially, I have a kinship with you because my brother is. I know you're a former electrical engineer, and so is my brother. So I love that about your journey.
Don't tell too many people
I,
about that,
I know, right?
Yeah, it's so funny. People meet me and they're like, seriously? You were an engineer? I was an
Yep.
electrical engineer. Yeah.
That's
Anyway.
great.
Well, folks, folks, if you enjoyed this, please subscribe. If you enjoyed it, share it with someone. And if you know some amazing leaders, share this with them. And I'm looking for referrals. If you know amazing people, owners, business owners, CEOs, executives that should be a guest, reach out to me.
Absolutely.
Sean, thank you so much for being here. This is Inside the Leader's Mind. I'm David Susan, and we'll see you next time, folks. Ciao.
Thank you. My